live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up. You got to pump it up. Don't you know?
Back. It's Ohio State week, everybody. It feels like Pump It Up is, that song, I'll be honest, it sucked for a while there. I wasn't feeling the vibe. I wasn't feeling the juice. But it's Ohio State week. Things are happening on the recruiting trail. The vibes are high in Ann Arbor. Everything feels good. Trent, good to see you rocking the flannel. Kind of got the Al Borland look over there. Is that, you don't know, do you know much about that show at all?
No.
You don't know anything about Al Borland?
I
Man.
don't.
I wonder if I'm dating myself by saying that. Tool Time, Home Improvement, Tim the Tool Man Taylor, his trusty sidekick, Al Borland. Dude, you got Al Borland vibes today. It's incredible. It's like Mr. Fix-It over there. Good to see everybody in the comments. Lydia, good to see you. Penny, welcome. Tyler, good to see you. CJ, as always. Darren, Shem, Ricky, Scott, Larry, Bobby. It's a big week, Trent. There is a big game this weekend. Scott signing on to the Al Borland for sure. Home Improvement. See, thank goodness there's people in here that can corroborate what
You're not alone, Chris. You're not alone.
This time I'm not. But it is a big week, man, and we didn't do the show on Monday, obviously, and so we haven't had the chance to really touch on what happened last weekend against Northwestern. Obviously, we're going to touch on a little bit about Ohio State this weekend. It is Wednesday, so it is Fan-Led Wednesday. So just keep in mind, if you guys have any questions, if you have any comments, any topics, any things you want us to address, please do get it in the comment section because that's really going to help carry the show today. But Bobby says bald guys understand the joke, Chris. That's right. Once again, we stick together and we look out for our own. So Trent, we didn't do the show on Monday. Let's revisit Northwestern just a little bit. I get it. It's Northwestern, not a good football team. I think they're 4-7 now at this point. Not going to be bowl eligible. But Michigan, on the other hand, Michigan that was the best performance Michigan has had, I would argue, on both sides of the ball all season long. Dominating win, 50-6 over Northwestern. Trent, what did you take away from that game? You were there. You were in the press box. You watched this play out. I remember texting you, asking you, I'm like, is this game as boring for you as it is for me? And you said, you affirmative. Yes, this is not a very interesting game. And then all of a sudden, Michigan flipped the switch. They turned it on, put 50 up on the scoreboard. What did you see? What did you like from the Wolverines?
I mean, it was a dominant performance. It's crazy that it took 11 games for Michigan to finally put together a complete game, but that's what happened. And obviously it was the second half, right? I mean, second half started and typically you see Michigan coming out of the halftime tunnel, sluggish, not playing well, but they put their foot to the gas pedal and they just kept rolling. The run game, Kalel Mullings was absolutely phenomenal. Donovan Edwards had a couple good runs. Jordan Marshall looked okay when he got his chances. Tavi Dunlap scored on his first handoff from Jaden Davis. He got into the game for one play. But it was a complete performance, and defensively they were fantastic, and they were without, of course, Will Johnson and Jair Hill. We can get into that a little bit later, but he came in during scrub duty, and they played great without those guys. They were sound. Zeke Berry had a good game. Offensively, Evan Link had a good game. Everybody played really well as a team. And granted, it was Northwestern, but Michigan's played worse teams than Northwestern and has looked worse this season. So don't take anything from Michigan for this performance because they played really good.
Yeah, and I mean, I get it was early on, and then Ohio State ended up, getting back on track. But Northwestern was in the game against the Buckeyes for what, the first quarter and a half before Ohio State turned it on. So Yeah, I mean, that's certainly not a scrub team. Ohio State's better than, some of the teams that Michigan has played. But I think overall it was just the sense that, Michigan finally played a complete game from start to finish. And that's what we haven't seen from the Wolverines all year long. Even going back to facing teams like Arkansas State, where Michigan would go in with like a comfortable lead at the half. And then they'd come out and it was like a different team came out of the locker room. They'd be giving up points. They'd allow somebody to claw back into it. We saw that against Arkansas State. We saw it against USC. Certainly saw it against Minnesota. I mean, that has been the MO for this team all along. And CJ from the Facebook page, he says, was anybody else pissed off after Saturday? They should have been playing like this all season. I mean, yeah, I think there's a part where you can't help but wonder how different would things have turned out this year if Michigan had found a way to play that way. And I think it's not that look, putting 50 on the scoreboard, that's impressive, but it's not like anything Michigan did offensively was overly impressive, right? They just did what they normally do well. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, they didn't give up any explosive plays. They only gave up 10 yards rushing. Now I get, that's adjusted for sacks, but only 10 yards rushing on the afternoon or on the evening, I should say. And that's the type of performance I think that we expected to see from this Michigan football team all season long. And so does a performance like that get you a win against Indiana? Does it get you a win against Washington? Does it get you a win against Illinois? I think you can make a strong argument that if you play that well and you execute, that's the difference, right? It's not like all of a sudden Davis Warren was throwing like bombs down the field to Tyler Morris and it was an explosive offense. They just did what they typically do well. They executed. And I think that was the big difference maker. So CJ, to your point, like, yeah, you can look at it and feel disappointed that, man, they left a lot on the field this year and this could have turned out differently. But overall, I think watching them play that game ahead of the biggest game of the season, it's got to give you some confidence about what Michigan's capable of going down to Columbus. And we'll get into that a little bit. But the notes I had on Northwestern was it was balanced between, if you look at the yardage through the air and on the ground, they were balanced. Third down conversions were another big thing for this Michigan offense. That has been a struggle for them offensively and defensively. Michigan converted on 11 of 16 third down attempts on Saturday. So they were able to sustain drives. That's why they were able to put points on the board. Time of possession, they won that battle by about 10 minutes. And then again, the defense only gave up 10 yards rushing. And so I think that's a recipe for success. And can they replicate that against the firepower that is down in Columbus with the Buckeyes? I'll have to see. Jim Tressel says, watch out for the weather. The weather is a great equalizer. And I haven't checked the forecast in Columbus, but I don't think this thing's going to come down to weather. I don't know if it's a throw the records out the window type thing, because it's very clear to me that Ohio State is far more talented. And if Michigan's going to get the win this weekend, they're going to have to play perfect. They're going to have to play better than they played last Saturday. They're going to have to find some firepower offensively, and they're going to have to get a lot of things to work their way, which I guess that leads to the question, Trent. 50-6 against Northwestern, an impressive performance, solid on both sides of the ball. How much does that type of performance change, I guess, maybe what you thought you could expect going into this weekend? Do you have more confidence against the Buckeyes after what you saw against Northwestern?
I mean, just to throw a couple, I guess, numbers out there, I probably had from 1 to 10, I probably was at like a 2 going into the Northwestern game against Ohio State. After watching the Northwestern game, it's probably like a 4 now. Like, it gave me a little more confidence, but I just don't know that this Michigan team can, like you said, the firepower. I don't know that they have the firepower offensively to keep up with Ohio State. Yeah. I feel like the way the defense has played the last 6 quarters, even that second half against Indiana, they figured something out. Wake Martindale has them rolling. The front four is creating pressure. The secondary is playing better, even without Will Johnson. And I think they figure stuff out there. But I don't think that you can shut Ohio State down. Like, you can slow them down, and that's when the offense has to figure something out and keep up scoring wise. And this game, this is Michigan's national championship game. This is their Super Bowl. They're not going to a playoff. So throw everything out there that you have. Like, whatever you have that you've been holding back, throw it all out there. Catch Ohio State off guard. Whatever that might be for Davis Warren, the running backs. Let Donovan Edwards throw the ball once or twice.
Got to.
Don't hold anything back. Do whatever you can do to score points against Ohio State and give yourself a chance.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what we are going to see from the Wolverines. I mean, there is, to Trent's point, there's nothing, yeah, you're going to go to a bowl game, but I mean, that's really forgetting the guys who are the young guys' experience. You're still going to play some of your veterans in the bowl game, but ultimately, you're right, Trent. This is Michigan's Super Bowl, and I do think they have an opportunity to knock off the Buckeyes. And you're right, you're not going to be able to stop that offense. That's not going to happen, but you can rattle Will Howard. We've seen Will Howard in tough situations when he gets rattled. I mean, he makes some questionable decisions. We saw it against, who the hell did they play last weekend? Who did Ohio State play?
Indiana.
Indiana, that's right. Indiana last weekend. And he was going down, and I think he sort of he kind of flicked it forward, almost like a forward fumble or whatever the hell that was. We saw him slide down against Oregon. If you can get him rattled, if you can shake the cage a little bit, Will Howard has a tendency to make some mistakes. And when you look at Michigan's front four, when you look at Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant and Josiah Stewart and Derek Moore, and even at the linebacker level, I think these guys have, no question about it, the talent and the manpower to make things very difficult for Will Howard. And I would argue that even though they have, they played Oregon, they played Indiana, obviously two of the top teams in the conference, I think this might be the most difficult defense, at least on the front, that Will Howard has had to face all year long with what they plan on bringing to Columbus. The question in my mind, Trent, is can the secondary keep up? And when you don't have Will Johnson in the lineup, when you're not really sure what's going on with Jair Hill, you got Zeke Berry out there, you got Makari Page out there, you got Amir Hall out there. Are those guys going to be able to contain Ohio State's wide receivers? I really think that is ultimately the thing that's going to be the difference maker in this game. I just don't know that they're going to be able to do it, but there's no question about it that they have the firepower up front on Michigan's side to get to Will Howard, to make things difficult, and to make it a game in the fourth quarter. And I think that's what you're really hoping for if you're Michigan. You've seen this tendency from Ohio State to start slow, to allow inferior opponents to stay in the game maybe a little bit longer than they should. If this is a one-score game going into the fourth quarter, once again, I don't know. Does Michigan have enough firepower offensively to win the game? I'm not sure about that. But defensively, I think they can do enough to keep the Wolverines in it.
Yeah, and to me, that's the number one key is that defensive front for Michigan. Gosh, man, Ohio State, they have two injured offensive linemen that won't be playing. They're done for the season. They kind of have a makeshift offensive line going on. If you just look at just paper to paper, Michigan's defensive line should absolutely dominate the Ohio State front five. They should absolutely dominate there. And the way that Wink Martindale he likes to throw blitzes in there, I think you really could rattle Will Howard. In fact, I was looking at analytics today, and when Howard's clean, he has a clean pocket, he's completing nearly 79% of his throws. However, when he's facing pressure, it dips down to 55%. So you have a real opportunity here if you're Michigan to get him under duress and make him do weird things. And that's what it's going to take for Michigan to win this game. Because let's call a spade. When you don't have Will Johnson in the lineup, that Ohio State receiving corps is way more talented than the Michigan secondary right now, especially when Will Johnson's not in the game. So you have to protect the secondary by getting pressure on Howard and making him force throws, take sacks, do whatever it's going to take for him not to get it to Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Ibuka and whoever else.
Yeah, it feels like on paper, and obviously when you look at the spread, Ohio State's about a 3-touchdown favorite. I think that number has lessened a little bit here to 21.5 maybe, but Ohio State is a massive favorite going into this game. And when you look at the two teams, it makes sense, particularly with what Michigan is lacking on the offensive side of the ball. But man, it just feels like Michigan is playing with house money and all of the pressure is on Ohio State. When you listen to the players talk about from Ohio State, the players talk about this rivalry and how hard it's been for them, how hard it's been for Ryan Day. And then you listen to Ryan Day talk about this is the worst thing, losing to Michigan is the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life. Outside of losing my father and a couple other things that have happened to me, this is the worst thing that has ever happened in my life, which is okay, you live a pretty good life then at that point, if this is the worst thing happening to you. But overall, I mean, it really speaks to how much this has had an impact on the folks in Columbus. And here you have a Michigan team coming into the building that's 6-5, that we would all agree at 6-5, they have underperformed this year. I think that Michigan is legitimately an 8 or 9 win team with the roster they currently have. But the play, if not higher, but at least 8-9 wins. I think that that's what this team is. And so it can be a bit deceptive when you look at Michigan at 6-5, out of the playoff picture, out of the conference championship picture, thinking that it's going to be a cakewalk. And I'm telling you right now, if Michigan finds a way to do what they did last weekend and carry that over into this weekend, and this game is a game going into the fourth quarter, I think the Wolverines have a shot. The question is, where's the magic going to come from? And that's what we have seen from Michigan. I mean, Hassan Haskins back in 2021, magical. David Ojabo, Aiden Hutchinson, just magical performances. In 2022, we know what it was. I mean, J.J. McCarthy had the long connection to Colston Loveland. He had another one to Cornelius Johnson. But then we had, the two dynamic runs, the nail in the coffins from Donovan Edwards. Can they recreate that? I guess here's what I'll ask you, Trent. Is it possible for Michigan to win this game without doing something we haven't seen them do all year long? Can they win this game without explosive plays? Can they win this game the way they won it against Northwestern, where it was execute, ground and pound, bubble screen, short slant, just kind of dink and dunk your way down the field? Or is Michigan really going to need to find a way to get some explosive plays on Saturday? We know it'd be nice, but is it necessary?
I think so. I think when you look back to 2021, 22, 23, the Michigan offensive line was as good as anyone out there. Even last season, they didn't win the Joe Moore Award, but they were just as good as anybody out there. And it's pretty evident that this year's Michigan offensive line is not the same offensive line as the last 3 years. And that's how they beat Ohio State, is they dominated in the trenches offensively and defensively. And of course, Michigan wants to run the football because that stat kind of dictates who wins this game typically. Yeah. So they're going to try to run the football.
Well, typically, since 2000, 2001, right? Yeah. Whoever's rushing battles won the football game.
But I just don't, again, looking at 21, 22, 23, Michigan had so many elite players on that offense that kind of carried their weight. And Michigan doesn't really have that elite star outside of Colston Loveland. I mean, you can make an argument for Big Play Don and Clem Mullings to some extent, but quarterback wise, they don't have an elite quarterback. They're going to have to do some different things to catch Ohio State off guard. Like if you bring in Alex Orji, everyone is going to believe it's a run. That's when you let him throw the football. You have to do some creative things if you're Kirk Campbell, and don't hold back, because if not, I think Ohio State has the talent and the speed that they're going to keep up with the Michigan offense.
Yeah, and obviously a huge key into this one is Michigan cannot get down early. Like you've got to come out swinging right from the get-go. And obviously you want to do that in every game, but it is particularly true of this one that you cannot afford a slow start. But for that reason, Trent, is that Michigan doesn't have the offensive firepower. They're not going to be able to claw out of a 17-point deficit against Ohio State on the road. So they're going to have to keep themselves in the game, score early, score often. Even if you got to rely on Dominic Zavada to put 3 points on the board, again, if you can go into the fourth quarter with this being a one-score game, then maybe you like Michigan's chances to hit a home run with the Don, whether it be on the ground or it is a sort of flea flicker or Edwards is throwing the ball, some sort of trickeration to find some explosiveness. Because, Trent, I agree with you that Michigan isn't, unlike years past, Michigan isn't equipped to bully its way to a win this time. And one of the things they're going to need desperately is the very thing that I think has handicapped this offense all season long. They are going to need phenomenal play calling. And I know that Sharon Moore wants to leave that to Kirk Campbell, but this has to be a collaborative effort. They have got to call, this has to be the best game they have called maybe of their lives in order to win this football game. And do we get that on Saturday? I mean, that's really going to be the thing to watch, is if Michigan starts to dink and dunk and it just looks the same as it's looked before. To me, that's not a recipe for success. And Trent, you said this earlier, whatever it is you got, whatever plays, those big plays that you keep in the back of the book, it's time to pull them out. It's time to use them. There's nothing to save at this point. And Dana, Trent's wife, says Michigan's just been warming up this whole time. That's all this was, this whole 6-5 season. This is really just to fool Ohio State into a false sense of security so that you can go down to Columbus and whoop that ass again. I don't know.
Michigan's going to leave they're going to leave with a 21-point win. I mean, that's what's going to happen.
Oh my God. Well, we talked about this before we went live that, it's different with this one and it feels different. Like the only people that have I think that sort of tingle about this game right now are the folks down in Columbus because they feel like they're going to get a win. They haven't been able to get a win in a long time. And I'm sure it's going to feel good, but from a national standpoint, nobody's going to give a shit if Ohio State gets this win. All it means is that Ohio State beat a 6-5 bad Michigan team that's having a down year. That's really all that means. So when you think about what the most intriguing storyline of this whole thing is and what's on the line for this game, Trent, there's only one thing on the line on Saturday, and it's Ryan Day's coaching future at Ohio State. That's it. If he wins, it's all good. Ohio State goes to the Big Ten championship. They make a run in the playoff. We'll see what happens from there. But if he loses this football game and he drops his 4th straight to Michigan, regardless of that impressive, what is he, 66-9 overall since taking over as head? I mean, phenomenal overall record. He loses his 4th straight to Michigan. He's out. He's done. This was the team. This is the Ohio State team that they paid for. They bought, they bring in Jeremiah Smith. They bring in Caleb Downs. You get Will Howard. This is Ohio State's national championship run. Where the Buckeyes are now is where Michigan was last year. You went into the season knowing it was natty or bust. You had all the pieces to get it done. And what did Michigan do with that? They went 15-0 and won a national championship. We already know Ohio State's not going to go undefeated because they couldn't get it done against Oregon. Thanks a lot, by the way, Ohio State. You're really going to let a Pac-12 team come in here the first year in the conference and run the table? That's embarrassing. But besides that, this is the team that is supposed to win the natty. This is it. This is as good as it's going to get for Ohio State. So if you drop a 4th straight with this team to a 6-5 Michigan team, we've talked about this all season long. There's just no way to survive it for Ryan Day. Even with his phenomenal overall record, I don't know that. I mean, will he even be coaching in the conference championship game? I mean, they won't make it, right? If they lose this game, it's probably Indiana because Indiana, right? So and that's the only thing on the line. Michigan's playing with house money. There's nothing to worry about. And I'll say this. Trent, you and I talked about earlier in the season. Actually, I say earlier. This is probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. How can Michigan salvage this season, right? We knew that things weren't going well. They looked bad. It was there's only one way. There's only one way for Michigan to salvage 2024, and that's to beat Ohio State. But the commitment of Bryce Underwood, I think, has changed the equation. I know it's changed it for me. I think it's changed it for a lot of people in this fan base. I'm not saying it's changed it for the team or the coaching staff. Believe me, they're all in on trying to get this win on Saturday, as they should be. But all of this outside pressure that seemed to be piling down on Michigan and Sharon Moore, the commitment of Underwood seems to have dissipated all of that. And I think now a lot of people are looking at this season and saying, yeah, well, it sucks, whatever, it doesn't matter, get us to 2025, because it feels like a return to a championship is now imminent for Michigan. So I guess, Trent, let me ask you this. We had those conversations. We knew the pressure was building on Sharon Moore. There were people calling for his job. You don't really see that much anymore after this big commitment. How much do you think the commitment of Underwood has sort of changed the equation to where the mindset is, the fan base, and what the expectation is to finish out this year, and particularly on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fans still obviously want to beat Ohio State and they want to see Michigan somehow upset them. But at the same time, I think you're right. I feel like all the attention is turned to 2025 now, regardless of the outcome of Saturday, whether Michigan wins or loses. It doesn't matter because Bryce Underwood's in the fold starting next season. Even if Michigan upsets Ohio State, you're still thinking, all right, Bryce Underwood's here next season. Let's have another great year. Let's get back to the playoff.
Right.
If Michigan loses, doesn't matter if it's 1 or 40 points. It's the same thing. All right, well, Ohio State won this year, but we have Bryce Underwood next year, and Michigan's going to start winning again. So I think either way that you look at it, that's kind of the attention. That's how it's turned for the fan base. But I kind of want to touch back on that whole pressure thing, because I think you're right. I think that, to me, there's zero pressure on Sharon Moore and Michigan. You're a 20.5 point underdog in this game. If you lose, if you can keep it close, that's a win in a way. If you win the game, I mean, that's phenomenal. Like that just speaks even more as to what Sherrod Moore has done in the last 2 weeks with securing a commitment from Bryce Underwood and then going into Columbus and winning the game. All of the pressure is on Ohio State, and Ryan Day knows that, which is why he's answered the questions about how difficult this last 3 years has been on his life and how it's a war. And the players feel the same way. That's why they all came back. That's why Emeka Egbuka came back. Travion Henderson came back, was to beat Michigan this season. And if they don't do that, I mean, it's a travesty the way that this roster has been built this season to beat Michigan and to win the Big Ten, which may not happen, which won't happen if they lose to Michigan. And honestly, I feel like the only way that this season is a success for Ohio State is you have to make a run in the playoff, because you're not undefeated anymore. Even if Ryan Day beats Michigan, he beat a then 6-6 Michigan team.
Right.
That doesn't mean a whole lot anymore. So you built the best roster that money could buy at that point in time. Like, you have to do something with it. So Ryan Day has all of the pressure on his shoulders.
Yeah, and there's no question. And that's why I think this game is so dangerous for what we talked about a little bit earlier, where, yeah, Michigan is 6-5 right now, but this team could easily have 8 wins, could easily have 9 wins. Like, they're not as bad as their record indicates. There's been play calling issues, and there's been issues at quarterback. We know that, but you're looking at Michigan as a 6-5 team, and I think it's a mistake if that's how you view Michigan as 6-5. You know, if you think it's going to be a cakewalk and you're Will Howard and you're this offense and you get out there and you got to deal with Mason Graham, who decides to turn it up on Saturday. You got to deal with Kenneth Grant, who decides to turn it up. You got to deal with Josiah Stewart, who we know can be a nightmare coming off the edge when he wants to be. You know, Jayshon Barham decides to show up. That secondary decides to show up. Now all of a sudden it's like, uh-oh, we got a game. You hit a couple explosive plays. If you're Michigan, you play solid defense, and then you figure it out in the fourth quarter. And I think that's a worst case scenario for Ryan Day, because as we have tended to see from them, they get tight in a tight game with Michigan. They're not really, they're not beating people up. If they're not the bully in the situation, they tend to tighten up a little bit. And I think all of that added pressure we talked about could certainly play a factor. So it's
Chris,
just
one last thing before we move on to the fan questions.
Yeah.
The one thing that not a whole lot of people are talking about is nobody on this Michigan team has lost to Ohio State.
Yeah.
Everybody on this Ohio State roster that's been at Ohio State has lost to Michigan. And so like, that's why Michigan's so confident. I've seen a couple people in here ask, like, why is Michigan so confident? They're 6-5, blah, blah, blah. It's because they've never lost to this team. Like, they know what it takes to beat Ohio State. And Ohio State, if Michigan can get it to the fourth quarter, that's when you're going to really see Ohio State tighten up, because it's going to be like, here we go again. Like, we haven't beat this team in 3 years. Like, here we go again. It's going to be a fourth year now that we lose to Michigan. So I really think if Michigan can keep it close and get it to the fourth quarter, you have a legit chance to win the game, just because of the mental side of things. Michigan hasn't lost to Ohio State with these players. Donovan Edwards has never lost to Ohio State. Travion Henderson has lost to Michigan every single year.
Do you think, and I know that they're going to feel good regardless of what it looks like, but if this one does come down to the wire and Ohio State just ekes out a win, do you think they're going to feel good about that in Columbus?
No,
do you think the fan base is going to rejoice about it? Or do you think it's going to be more of an indictment on Ryan Day? Like, is really the only way to win this game if you're Ryan Day? And when I mean win it, I don't just mean in the win-loss column, but I mean like win it as in you've convinced people you're not who they tend to think you are. Is the only way for him to really win is to do it in a dominant fashion? If this thing is close, like, it seems like people are still going to be upset. You're happy you got the win, but you're not going to be happy with a close game against 6-5 Michigan, right?
I don't think so. I think the fan base wants blood. Like, they've lost to Michigan now for 3 years in a row. You're 3 touchdown favorite. You're essentially a 21-point favorite entering the game, which is unheard of in this rivalry. And I mean, that's going to be the expectation. Like, I get that you can typically you throw the records out the window, like anything could happen, but this fan base wants blood. They want to see Ryan Day run up the score on Michigan. Like, I live in Ohio. I'm surrounded by Ohio State fans, and that's what they say. Like, they want a 28+ point win over Michigan this weekend. And if somehow Michigan loses by 3, like, yeah, it's a win, but that's not a dominant win against a bad Michigan team.
Yeah. It's really going to be it's going to be interesting to see this one play out, because unlike years past, like I just don't feel, even as a fan, like I don't feel that anxiety ahead of this game that I normally feel. And it does kind of feel like, we'll see what they can do. We'll see if they can get the win. And if they can't, Bryce Underwood's hit. Dude, that commitment from Bryce Underwood just changed
everything
so much. I think it took so much pressure off of, the narrative that was building around Michigan and Sharon Moore and sort of what his future was going to be here. And I think that when you put all of the elements of this game together, the lack of pressure that's on Michigan right now and all of the pressure on Ohio State and sort of all the narratives about these two teams going into it, I think that this is going to make for a really interesting matchup. And for anybody that thinks it's going to be a complete blowout, like you could be right. Like there's no question. We've seen Michigan not show up. We have seen Michigan get dominated. Dude, that game against Illinois coming out of the bye week was an absolute embarrassment. We have seen Michigan do this throughout the season, which is that's how you get to 6-5. But any given Saturday, you show up in a rivalry game and you think Michigan really is just a 6-5 shitty team, and all of a sudden they come to play. That could make for an interesting afternoon in Columbus. There's no doubt about it. Let's get to some of these fan questions now that we're 30 minutes into the show. Just Trent and I riffing here for a little bit. So what happens when you don't go live on a Monday? Damian from the Facebook page, he says, do you think Kurt Campbell has done enough to keep his offensive coordinator position? Follow up with Underwood coming in. Do we need to add an elite quarterbacks coach? It's interesting. Trent and I were actually talking about this before we clicked the live button. I'll throw it over to you, Trent. Do you think Campbell's done enough to keep his job as offensive coordinator?
As offensive coordinator, no. I think he's done enough recruiting wise and just the players liking him that there's a role for him on the team. Like, I mean, I could still sign up for an offensive quarterbacks coach position, possibly. Offensive coordinator, no. However, if Michigan goes out and they score 40 plus points against Ohio State and win the game, like I think I could probably sign on board then. You put up 50 points against Northwestern and then you score 40 plus against Ohio State and win, and Michigan's offense looks electric. Either Sharon Moore took over the play calling or Kurt Campbell figured something out, and I think I could maybe sign on then. But as of today, no, I don't think Kurt Campbell has done enough to warrant keeping him as offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think his inexperience has showed this year, and it doesn't mean that he, ultimately can't become that, and that, he doesn't have a future as an offensive coordinator or possibly even, beyond that. But I just think that after this season, it's clear to me that Sharon Moore needs an experienced offensive coordinator who's been doing it at the collegiate level successfully for a while. And in saying that, I don't think that means that you get rid of Kurt Campbell altogether. I do think Kurt Campbell should stay on the staff in some capacity, most likely as the quarterbacks coach, because I think he's great at developing relationships with the players. I think they have a lot of respect for him. And I think that even though we have seen some not so great things from the quarterbacks this year, I do think he's a pretty good quarterbacks coach. I know that JJ McCarthy spoke very highly of him. And I think that it would be advantageous to keep him on the staff. But this is one of those things where it's like, you have relationships with people and you want to do right by people, but you also got to do right by your football program. And I think that the best way Sharon Moore can do right by this football program is by going out and finding an elite offensive coordinator who would jump at the opportunity to come to Michigan and be able to be the offensive coordinator with Bryce Underwood and all his buddies in Ann Arbor. I just think that's what you need if you're Sharon Moore and if you're Michigan. You got to find a guy who's been doing it at a high level for quite a while, who wants to come and do it at the University of Michigan. And like I said, I'm not trying to knock Kurt Campbell. It hasn't been good this year. It hasn't been good, not nearly as good as it needs to be. And I think Sharon Moore needs that around him. Now, the defensive side, maybe we got something to talk about there with Wink Martindale.
Yeah.
He was, people were slamming him quite a bit. It seems like the defense has settled in. Maybe he's getting some things figured out, but certainly at the offensive coordinator, I think Michigan needs to make a change. Let's go through. Let me see. I saw another question here. Ricky from the Facebook page. He said, why on earth did Hill, talking about Jair Hill, have the number 35 on his uniform? Is he in the doghouse? This was something that we noticed pretty early on. Jair Hill was not, by the way, dude, people were angry with me on social media. People were angry with me on the Facebook page for saying that Jair Hill wasn't playing and that he was wearing the number 35 jersey, which I don't know why you would be angry at me. Like, we noticed pretty early on he had the different number on, And then when the starting unit went out defensively, he wasn't playing. And he didn't see the field until what? Sometime in the fourth quarter,
Yeah,
I think.
fourth quarter when they emptied the benches.
Right. So I'm not sure why people were angry at me about that. And, the details on why that happened, I think it would be irresponsible for us to speculate. All I will say is this: it's not injury related.
Nope.
And Trent and I were talking about why you would potentially change somebody's jersey number. I tend to think that if you're a player, you kind of like the number you have. And if somebody decides to not play you and switch your number, it's to send a message for some reason. Whatever that reason is, I'm not exactly sure. And again, not going to speculate if he's in the doghouse. It's just, I don't think they woke up in the morning and said, you know what? We're not going to play Jair Hill with the first unit and we're going to change his number today. I just don't think it was a random occurrence that Sharon Moore decided to do that on Saturday. Whether or not that means he's in the doghouse, I don't know. And I'm not going to speculate. Trent, anything else you want to add on that?
The only thing I can add was I was at the press conference afterwards, and of course, Sharon Moore was asked about it. And he just said it's something they are dealing with internally.
Sure.
So I mean, that's really all I can add, which if it's a punishment, I still don't fully understand the jersey change. I mean, I get that these kids love their numbers and possibly that's a form of a punishment.
Absolutely, man. If you have a number that you love, that's your number. That's, it's like, Charles Woodson loved the number 2. You take the number 2 away from Charles Woodson at Michigan, you're probably like, what? And you put him in 38. He's probably thinking, what the hell is this all about? So, like, again, I don't want to speculate. I'm just saying, I don't think you can overestimate the power of like taking somebody's number away if that's like the number they love and that's the number they want to build their legacy in. Like that can be just another tool in the toolbox if you want to try to get your point across. But don't be angry at me about it. I don't know why the hell people are angry at me. They were like, well, he did get in the game. He did play. Yes, I know he ended up playing, but he wasn't playing. That's the point. He wasn't with the starting unit and his number was different.
I can't believe you would report something so unfactual like that.
Like people were like, get your facts straight. He was in the game. Like, yes, in the fourth quarter, playing with the second unit. Like, what are we doing here? 20 degrees. Oh, okay. 20 degrees in Columbus oh my God. Is it really going to be that
cold, man?
Again, jeez.
That's what I heard too. I haven't actually looked at it, but that's what I've heard. That's going to be like 20.
That's not ideal. Tyler from the Facebook page says, any update on Rod Moore? No, I don't think there's any at least not any update that I have. If you're asking if there's any chance he's going to play on Saturday, I would put that at practically 0. If this were a movie, right? If Spielberg was directing this, we would see Rod Moore make his reappearance. We would see Will Johnson back on the field, and we would see Rod Moore ultimately seal the game on an interception. Dude, I mean, that's the stuff movies. That's like the Mighty Ducks type shit that we're talking about. But in reality, I don't think we're going to see Will Johnson or Rod Moore on Saturday. Yeah. But no update on the injury.
No, I mean, I'm guessing. That whole 1 more year fund. Rod Moore is going to be the top of that list. Like Michigan's going to do everything that it can to get Rod Moore to come back for one more season.
And Tim from the Facebook page, he says Al Borges broke it down. Former, he was on Michigan's staff. Was he was with Hoke, right? He wasn't part of the Harbaugh era.
No, he was not with Harbaugh.
He was part of the Hoke era, but I think he does, maybe he does some breakdowns on 247. He said that Michigan used some RPOs to keep the defense more honest. Like, sure, yeah, whatever the hell you got to do. I mean, but again, RPO stuff, like I am not a football coach, but RPO stuff to keep the defense honest, that's like day one shit. That should be in your rep like right out of the gate. So I'm glad that they were doing that. And I just hate that it took until week 11 to figure out that, hey, maybe that could be effective. So is what it is.
Hey, it took 11 games, but they figured it out.
You know what? Let's try that RPO thing that we've been hearing about. It's been around since 1995. Let's see. It's supposed to be 11. What are we? Are you Jacob? Are you? I see you got the headset on there. Are you reporting this from a ship or from an airplane? He says it's supposed to be 11 to 19 knots for the wind. I have no idea what the hell.
What his pilot app says, man. Come on.
I will be honest. I don't know what a knot is. What's the conversion rate knots to miles per hour here?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I need somebody to translate that to me. I don't operate in knots.
Is that gonna be like 120 miles per hour? Like the wind's just gonna be crazy.
What's the conversion rate on a knot? I don't know. But I do I appreciate the information here, Jacob. I'm not smart enough to do anything with that. Let's go through some more of these. Yeah, it's back, by the way. I had to bring Mariah Carey back.
Unreal.
We needed more joy. We're past Halloween now. I kind of missed it a little bit. Going through yada yada yada. Not dismissing your comments. I'm just looking for some questions here.
What time are you at?
I am at 12:13. Troy Flynn says, will Jaden Davis pass the ball? No, that's about all the time we need to spend on that. Jaden Davis will not pass the ball. Big Time Don will show up. That's Troy from the Facebook page. It would certainly be a phenomenal time for it to happen. Shem from the Facebook page. He says, Chris and Trent, do you guys buy into the players' confidence this week? Pressers, you would never know they are 3 touchdown underdogs. And I think, Trent, that's what you were speaking to earlier, right? Is the fact that, I do buy the confidence. I think that these guys know, just like we were saying earlier, I think they know the season hasn't gone the way they expected it to go. But I think we all know that this team is better than 6-5. And I think the guys in that locker room know they're better than 6-5. And when you combine that with the fact that they have never lost to Ohio State, they think they can get this done. Yeah, I genuinely buy the confidence. I think that these players are going to go into Columbus knowing we've got nothing to lose. We're playing with house money. We're coming here to win. It truly is Michigan versus everybody. They like to do this Ohio versus the world bullshit. No, it's Michigan versus everybody this weekend. There's no question about it. And I think the players are embracing it, and I think they're going to go in and play loose, have fun, have confidence. The only issue I have, Trent, with speaking of the players' press conferences, and you know me, I love the Don. I love Donovan Edwards. I did not care for the kindness of his comments when he was talking about Ohio State this week. I thought he was a little bit too friendly. Trent, am I reading more into that, or I know you saw those comments. Were you a little bit turned off by the fact that for those who didn't, you want me to read what he said? This is Donovan Edwards. This is his quote talking about Ohio State in the rivalry. He says, I quote, I remember just learning about it in class from Greg Dooley, how he said that Woody Hayes had said something along the lines of calling up a Michigan player and they're always going to be there for you. That's honestly what it's all about. It's a respected rivalry. I have guys on their team that I respect and admire, and I've been able to understand and get to know them throughout this year. This is what it's mostly about. It's a respected rivalry, 2 legendary teams and people who generally care about one another and don't hate each other just because they play for another team. I have an issue with that, Trent. That's a little bit too friendly for rivalry week. And look, I get Donovan Edwards he's on a journey. He has a great outlook on life, and I think it took a lot of work for him to get there. So I don't want to knock the comments, but did anybody see that video of Samaj Morgan after Michigan won the football game in 2023? Kind of his rant in the locker room, like that might be how Donovan Edwards feels. I don't know that the whole team feels that way, but Trent, any issues with Donovan Edwards saying, that's what it's mostly about, 2 legendary teams and people who generally care about each other and one another and don't hate each other? Is that what you want to hear, rivalry week?
Yeah, I don't have a huge problem with it because, when you compare Michigan State and Ohio State, I think there's definitely more respect between Michigan and Ohio State compared to Michigan State and Michigan. But at the same time, it is the game week. You wouldn't think you'd hear those type of comments. But at the same time, if that's how he feels, that's what he's going to say. He's definitely a guy that's going to share how he feels. But no, I don't think most of the team probably feels the way that Donovan Edwards feels about it.
I just would have preferred to say, I hate those dirty redneck trash bags down in Columbus. Can't wait to go down there and stomp the shit out of them. That's what it's about here in Ann Arbor. But that probably wouldn't have played well. So
that would definitely be some bulletin board material for the Buckeyes.
Just getting angry at people for being kind, good, decent human beings. does the world come to? Ben, don't break. Troy asks, is Will Johnson playing? I don't think so. I wouldn't count on it. There's no question there. 12-18. Oops, wrong button. Just trying to kill time here as I'm going through. I really got to catch up. Field goals won't cut it this week, says Bobby. Yeah, field goals won't cut it, but field goals also like points versus no points. Like Dominic Zavada is a real weapon for this Michigan football team. And if they can get him in field goal range and you can put 3, 6, I mean, we saw it with Jake Moody, right? Jake Moody was a real weapon for the Michigan Wolverines. And so, yeah, you can't exclusively rely on field goals. You're going to have to put the ball in the end zone. There's no doubt about it. But if it is a close game and Michigan can turn it into a fist fight, field goals are certainly going to play a factor. And I think, we're going to have 11 to 19 knots, whatever the hell that means. I'm sure Dominic Zavada can manage it. Did anybody clarify what the hell a knot is?
I didn't see anybody clarify it.
It's because nobody knows. Nobody knows. We're all confused.
It sounds like it's a lot of wind though. Like whatever it is, it's gonna be windy.
But it also sounds like it's not much wind. 11 knots, that's nothing. Can deal with it. 11 knots all day, every day. 4 in a row.
I think the stadium's gonna be shaking there in Columbus with how windy it is.
Timothy says Ryan Day is the new John Cooper. I mean, certainly if he doesn't get the win this weekend, like there's already talk about that. But yeah, if he loses to this team, then yeah, John Cooper 2.0. There's no doubt about it. Bobby, let's see.
Oh, it's 10 to 11 miles per hour.
10 to 11 miles per hour. Yeah, I mean, that's manageable. Zavada will be fine in that. Guys, this is Bobby from the Facebook page. He says, guys, do you think Michigan still has the mental edge over Ohio State? I think if we punch him in the mouth, doubt will creep in. Yeah, that we talked about that earlier. I'm very far behind. But yeah, I do think that Michigan has the mental edge on Ohio State. I think Ohio State is hungry. I think they're talented. I think they're hungry, and I think they see an opportunity to really get a win in this rivalry with Michigan having a down year. But that's why I think it's dangerous, because Michigan is down, but I don't think they're as down bad as a lot of people think, even though we've seen some pretty shitty performances from this team this year. I just think that, they're not as bad necessarily as their record shows, and I think that could easily be an 8 or 9 win team. But here we are at 6-5.
Yeah, Michigan's 6-5, but like you said earlier, I think that this team should have been at least an 8 win team, if not more. So Michigan's definitely talented on paper. If you just look at their lineup, just solely on paper, don't look at stats or anything, you would think that this team's pretty good.
Yeah, this is something that I also noticed, Trent, and I want to ask you about this. Scott Ryan from the Facebook page, which, by the way, incredible photo there, Scott Ryan. I mean, this guy he's clearly cut out the carbs. He's pumping the iron. I mean, he's got to it's an inspiration for me. Trent and I were talking. We're both slacking on our diets. We got Thanksgiving coming up here. It's just been a complete shit show. So thank you for the inspiration, Scott. He says, I don't recall Alex Orji getting a snap last game. We're preparing for the wishbone. I did notice that, and I thought that was interesting. We did not see Alex Orji enter the game. And for as big of a fan as I am still of Alex Orji, I thought that was a great move. I thought that helped the offense. I thought that it kept Davis Warren in the pocket. And I thought that not switching things up throughout the course of a drive, I think it just helped with momentum. Trent, what were your thoughts on not seeing Alex Orji on Saturday? And I guess how much do you think that played a factor in seeing one of the most successful outputs offensively we've seen all year?
I loved it. I've been against this 2 quarterback system for the whole season.
Me too. You
hated it the whole time. You didn't want to see anything to do with it.
Never been a fan of the 2 QB system.
You didn't write 2 stories about how Michigan should use a 2 quarterback system or anything like that.
I didn't do it. Fake news.
Right. So no, I loved it because the last however long since Davis Warren's been starting since Michigan State, like we've seen Alex Orji, and it did work against Michigan State, but since then, every time he enters the game, run stuffed. And it seemed like Kurt Campbell would bring him in when they get into the red zone. Like he would derail the entire drive. Like every single time you would derail it. Well, this time you left Davis Warren in the game. The running game was working. Davis Warren was playing pretty good, and you saw Michigan put up 50 points. So if I'm Kurt Campbell, I'm sticking with Davis Warren on Saturday, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean that's
But if you do put Orgy in the game, that's where you have to mix it up. Ohio State's going to guess that you're running the football, and that's when play action pass. Like you do something. You do something different. Don't show your hand.
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. I don't know, because I can see an advantage where maybe you would want to bring Alex Orgy in to try to move the sticks, but if it's not working, short yardage, why not just try to get it with Khalil Mullings? Why not try to get those yardage, that yardage with the guys in the backfield? That is one to keep your eye on for sure. How they choose to use Alex Orgy on Saturday. Didn't see him against Northwestern. The offense seemed to do just fine, but that doesn't mean that he shouldn't play a role on Saturday. I'm curious to see how they do it, because it hasn't, I think, outside of, can you point to one game where that tandem was really effective?
Michigan State.
Yeah, that's it.
That is it.
One game this year where it's worked really well. Got it. And CJ did convert the knots for us. Thank you so much, CJ. I appreciate that. That's why we love CJ here. Going through as we are at 50 minutes here. Yeah, we know it's a special date today. We're going to get to it at the end of the show. Just everybody just calm down. Calm down. You think Trent's wearing a fancy shirt today for no reason? He went deep into the closet for that one, and for a particular reason. There's no doubt about it. That's his best flannel he has.
It's my newest one I have.
The newest, the best. See, you don't know what that is either, Trent. That's from Home Improvement. A classic.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to, maybe I'll just binge watch it.
Dude. Wait, hold on. Are you saying you've never seen Home Improvement?
I've seen like 1 or 2 episodes ever.
That is, out of anything I think you've ever said to me, that's the most offensive. And you've said some pretty offensive things to me. That is the most offensive. Most of it comes offline. You guys don't know about Trent behind the scenes. This guy pushes the boundaries quite a bit. If I exposed our text chain, Trent, you would be in some trouble. You would be canceled.
Yeah, because you're just a saint, Chris.
Are you going to Chuck E. Cheese today? No,
yeah, I am.
Somebody is going to go get some pizza, from what I've heard. Look, we're at 52 minutes. Jacob says, sorry, he's a pilot. We use knots. Okay. Real slick way of kind of hinting that. So you fly planes. You're better than the rest of us. We get it. We understand. Dana, your wife, says, I watched Home Improvement.
Why were you in school at 2 a.m.?
No, Home Improvement. When she was in middle school at 2 a.m. Yeah, that's, See, when I was watching Home Improvement, this is to give you an idea, it was like primetime TV at my age. When Home Improvement, the new episode came out, like you would gather around the TV and you would watch Home Improvement. Home Improvement, Family Matters, Full House, TGIF, all that shit, man. Your wife is just coming at you on your birthday. My goodness. Love to see it here. Let me see. Is this a question? Scott from the Facebook page says, can we all agree Billionaire's wife needs her own song on this podcast? The perfect woman. P.S. I'm 53. Got to pump the iron, but damn, I eat a lot of carbs. That is a loaded question / statement, Scott. But yeah, I would say that what the hell? Ellison? What's his first? His wife? I can't remember. I wasn't prepared for this question.
Jolyn or
Jolyn Ellison?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you go to Michigan? She's a Michigan alum.
Yeah.
So that whole conversation between her and Dave Portnoy, apparently that's the strange thing about this whole and it just goes to show you where we're at, is it really seems like the push for Bryce Underwood, at least on the financial side, began back in late September when Dave Portnoy put out that video where he said, look, I'm willing to pay $3 million to get an elite quarterback at Michigan, which led to some conversations taking place. According to Portnoy, Michigan or representatives of Michigan had reached out and said, hey, there's somebody that wants to talk to you about this, yada, yada, yada. It's lo and behold, it turns out to be the wife of Larry Ellison, right? Yep. Is the owner, founder of Oracle. He's worth like 240 billion. That's $1 billion. And, they ended up having a conversation. and then that conversation took place with reportedly Bryce Underwood and his family. Long story short, they were able to put together an NIL package that was enough to keep Bryce Underwood home. And, we've talked about this a couple of times since that happened, man. It just goes to show you that I don't think people fully realize how dangerous the University of Michigan is if they do choose to utilize the money cannon. Yep. There are so many alumni of Michigan that are in big and powerful places around the country that a lot of people just aren't. I mean, Adam Schefter was breaking news on Bryce Underwood for a reason, right? You got Tracy Wolfson, who's on the sideline covering the NFL, Michigan alum. You've got Rich Eisen, Michigan alum. You've got Dave Portnoy, Michigan alum. You've got the wife of Larry Ellison, Michigan alum. I mean, if Michigan wants to utilize the resources it has at its disposal for NIL, I don't know that there is a program in the country that can compete. And I know I say that as somebody who covers Michigan and as somebody who's a Michigan football fan, but I genuinely don't know that there's any sort of college out there that has the type of alumni base that Michigan has, where they want this football team to win national championships year in and year out. And if they're given the green light, they're going to fire the money cannon. And it worked for Bryce Underwood, and I think it's going to work for more in the future.
In a way, though, isn't it sickening, though, that it took this long for these donors and alum and Michigan itself to step up and utilize it? Yeah,
but I mean, but it isn't for me, though, because Michigan, 2021 to 23 was incredible. And there's not any amount of NIL that I think would have changed it or enhanced it. It was perfect the way it was, the way it played out, with Michigan going to the playoff, losing, going to the playoff, losing, going back to the playoff, winning it all. That was a magical stretch. And I don't know that I would have wanted NIL to be sort of a reason people could point to and say, well, that was why that happened. Like, there was something so genuine about the way that all played out and took place. But we've talked about this before, that the best motivator for NIL is having a shitty season. And that's what's happened at Michigan. And I think that Joelle Ellison, right? Is that how you say it? I can't get her.
Jolyn, I think.
Jolyn Ellison. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. But I think what Portnoy relayed was, she said, I don't want credit. Nobody needs to know. I want Michigan competing for national championships every single year in and year out. I want them to stack national championships. And I think that a losing season or a struggling season can really help motivate the right type of people. And that's what you saw. And the end result was to bring Bryce Underwood, or keep Bryce Underwood at Michigan. And I think that now that they've done it, now that they've opened the door to it, and they were able to secure a guy like Bryce Underwood, once you see the fruits of that pay off, that's when I think Michigan is going to go to another level as a program. Like we talk about, is Michigan a true blue blood? Like, blue bloods don't typically fall off. They don't typically have these types of seasons. Like, a down year for a blue blood is like 9 wins, right? 9-3 in the regular season. Michigan's clearly having a down year. But if they decide to go all in on NIL, and I think this move with Underwood proves that they're there now, I think that it's setting Michigan up to be a national championship contender every single year. If there is a person or people or group of folks that they want to bring to Ann Arbor, whether it's from the recruiting trail, transfer portal, all of those people that seem like they were those types of recruits, those types of guys that just seem like they were never destined for Michigan, the Jeremiah Smiths, right? The Bryce Underwood, those guys aren't going to come to Michigan. They will come to Michigan now, because Michigan is going to be an appealing place that plays the game with NIL, and with Underwood in the fold and the other weapons in the fold, the offense is going to look enticing as well. And so when you put it all together, play on the field, world-class education, an alumni network that's, as good as any that you'll find in the country, I think Michigan's going to have a real case to make on the recruiting trail. And I think it's just an exciting time to be a Michigan football fan. And we're saying all of that in the midst of a 6-5 season.
Yeah.
That's how big of a deal this shit is, because 6-5 all of a sudden doesn't hurt anymore. Doesn't feel bad anymore. Just won a national championship this year. Michigan won a national championship like 11 months ago, right? And now next year we're already talking about number one quarterback, number one player in the country, and thinking that
they're not done. That's the thing. Like, they're not done yet.
Yeah, and that's why this stuff matters. So Scott, I mean, that was about a 10-minute response to your comment here, but yes, she should probably have her own song here on the podcast. Dwayne Jones says he disagrees. Blue bloods do fall off. Miami, Oklahoma, Texas, Bama. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that's the argument that people push back at. Like you look at Ohio State and it's like, well, Ohio State really doesn't fall off. Like a bad year for Ohio State is 9 or 10 wins. And so I'm not going to get in. Michigan is a blue blood, regardless of what happens. Even when you take into account the Rich Rod era and the Hoke era, Michigan is still a blue blood college football program. No college football program has more wins than the University of Michigan, and they're reigning national champions. And I think when you take it all into account, Michigan isn't going anywhere. The only concern about Michigan was, would they ever be willing to play ball in the era of NIL? And for a little while, it seemed like they weren't going to do it and that it was really going to set the program back. And after a down year, everybody came together and said, nah, we're not going to allow that to happen. And now nobody can compete with Michigan as far as NIL is concerned. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. Do they get Meadows? I mean, how do you feel about this one? There's been some talk about Meadows. He was committed to is he committed? He's committed to LSU?
LSU, yeah.
Okay, so he's committed to LSU. Obviously, he had a tight relationship with Bryce Underwood. There's some belief that Michigan, and he's a 4-star wide receiver, a guy that obviously has a relationship with Underwood. I mean, confidence level that they're going to bring Meadows into the fold, or do you think maybe there's another elite wide receiver out there that is on Michigan's radar?
If I had a crystal ball that I could place, I would say probably like a 6. I don't think LSU's in the picture whatsoever anymore. He's an LSU commit, but it seemed like for a while it was like a Michigan Notre Dame battle, and now Alabama's trying to get it into the mix to get him. But he has that connection with Bryce Underwood. Like he committed to LSU to play with Bryce Underwood. He was already interested in Michigan when he picked LSU over Michigan. So I feel pretty confident of Michigan getting him.
Yeah. Yeah, and let me go back up here. Chuck from the Facebook page, he says you should see the LSU meltdown. Oh, we're seeing it, Chuck. We are seeing it. All of this, dude. I can't believe I never knew there were so many advocates against NIL down in Baton Rouge. Like ever since Bryce Underwood flipped, the last place you would expect it to come from, LSU fans are all of a sudden now saying that NIL is ruining the sport. We've let it get out of control and on and on and on. No, that's not what happened. What happened was you guys have been playing this game all along, and Michigan just decided to play it as well. And as is often the case, Michigan just plays it better. And when Michigan plays it better, people get sour and upset. And that's how you get an LSU fan saying that NIL is ruining college football. You weren't saying that. You weren't saying that up until losing Bryce Underwood. Give me a break. Stop crying.
None of those SEC teams are talking about how bad NIL is because they're all utilizing it.
The amount of crying and whining, like it seems like it's more this year than I think any other year that I can remember. Maybe I'm just hypersensitive to it because I'm at a point where I'm just over it. But dude, people cry and whine about everything week in and week out, whether it's the college football playoff rankings or the AP rankings or NIL and this commit flips there. It's like not like just too much whining. It's too much whining and I can't do it. It's Thanksgiving. It's the holiday season. I'm trying to be in a good mood over here. Stop crying and whining. Look, we're at an hour and 3 minutes here. Special announcement we got to make here on the show before we get off, and it's for our very own Trent Knoop here. It's his birthday today, everybody. So if you haven't mentioned or you haven't said happy birthday in the comments, shame on you. Make sure you get Trent a happy birthday. He put on his fancy shirt today. He's got big
just
plans
for this podcast.
Big plans with his wife. They're going out for fancy pizza later on today. We want to make sure that Trent has a phenomenal birthday, enjoys his day. Trent, is there anything you want to say as you embark now on this journey into your 30s? What, 31 today?
31 today, yes.
31 today. So I can tell you from experience, the next 9 years are going to go by very quickly. Embrace every single moment that you have in your 30s. Any grand statement you want to make now that you've turned 31 and it's a big day for you?
It is. No, I mean, I appreciate all the happy birthday wishes I'm getting in the comments. No, I don't really have a lot to say other than, 31, man. It feels just like yesterday I was in high school and then you blink your eye and I'm 31. I'm married with a kid. Like life just really comes at you fast. That's for sure.
Yeah. There's no question about it. And it's only going to get faster. Your wife says send gifts. Yeah, send him gifts, send him money. If you're feeling generous, send me some gifts and some money as well. CJ says Trent looks like a Dino Nuggets and mac and cheese type of guy. There's no question about it. If you know Trent, that's right up his alley. I mean, just a salt of the earth guy, just a guy who loves to bowl, eat pizza, hang out, watch football. I mean, that's why we love Trent.
That's basically what I'm all about.
Listen, the only thing that can make it possibly better would be a win on Saturday, right?
Oh, yeah.
Saturday for Michigan against Ohio State. We will be back on Friday to share our thoughts, our score predictions, dive more into the game. But until then, enjoy yourself, Trent. Enjoy your night with your wife. Have a great pizza outing. And for those of you out there who tuned in, we appreciate you. Get off the computer, get away from your phone, protect your mental health. We'll see you back here on Friday.
Thanks, everyone. See you Friday.
And my stomach is sick, and it's all in my head, but she's touching it.